Hi friends, hope you are doing well. I'm Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to discuss the problem with student loans. And this is particularly as far as the Asian community in the US is concerned. And what has happened is that a lot of student loans have been forgiven. This is in the tune of billions of dollars. And the Asian community has often not been able to take advantage of some of this loan forgiveness. So I'm going to discuss 5 points in this video about why this has happened. And in the last point, I'm going to talk about how you can think about things such as this situation can be fixed in some manner. So let's begin. Now, the first point is that as far as the US education system is concerned, it is extremely expensive. And here I'm talking about the colleges, university, the tuition you pay, and the cost of living in the university, the rent in the dorms, in the apartments you need to get to study in the university, and also for the food and so on. Now, what happens is that in the typical Asian mindset, the parents actually save a lot of money for the education of their children. And this is one of the goals of many people out there. And what they do is they may save money in different mutual funds in different locations. And at the end of the day, when their kid goes to college, they often shell out money not only for the tuition but also for the living expenses at the university. Now, in many cases, even if you are doing a bachelor degree, you may spend up to tens of thousands of dollars in terms of tuition fee. And sometimes people even do master's degree, they may even go to medical school. And that may entail actually paying up to 9 years of tuition fee and living expenses for a student at the university. And what has happened over the years is that the cost of the university education has been going up. And also remember that the top schools in the world, especially the US schools such as the Ivy League universities, they actually charge an enormous amount in terms of tuition fee. So it is possible that at the end of the bachelor degree, you may have spent as much as $500,000 to get your degree. So this is something which is happening every now and then. And for medical school, the amount may go to $1 million. Now let's come to point two, and that is the prevalence of student loans in the US system. And most of the time, what happens is that students in the US take out a student loan and then they essentially pay for their tuition, sometimes the living expenses, and so on. They may also work part time, but most of the time, actually, the money comes from the student loan concern. And at the end of the day, when they get a job, if they get a job, they try to pay off this particular student loan. Now, over the last several years, a lot of student loans of students have been forgiven by the government. And so this has resulted in a situation where the people who did not take student loan, particularly I'm talking about some of the people in the Asian community who have this particular habit of saving money for their kids' degrees and so on, these guys have lost out billions of dollars. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the number third issue has to do with this peculiar problem as far as the Asian people are concerned, because the countries where they are migrating from, let us say China, India, Korea, Japan, maybe even Philippines, Vietnam, and so on, what happens is that in these countries there is very little subsidy for the different education degrees out there. And so people actually save the money and then they pay for the tuition. Here, there is not much prevalence of the loan culture as far as education is concerned, at least at the current point in time. And in case they do take a loan, the loans are not of very large quantity. And what has happened is that these guys have continued this particular thinking process in the US, and the result is that they have been saddled with this big problem where they have paid off for the entire degrees and then they do not have any student loan and they have missed out on this loan forgiveness. So, this is something which has happened to them. Now, the fourth point has to do with many situations where if you do take a student loan and you end up joining certain professions like the government or maybe get into teaching, then a lot of the student loan can be forgiven if you work in this institution for a long period of time. And again, this is something which these guys have lost out on because if you never took a student loan, then of course nothing is there to forgive. So finally, the fifth point has to do with what are the things people could do as far as this student loan issue is concerned. One of the things is that as far as the Asian community is concerned, they may decide that they can save more money for their retirement, for example, which can take up a lot of funds, and they can actually save less money as far as the education of their children is concerned. And also they can let their children take student loans later in life. If they feel like it, they can actually pay off the student loan for their kids, but at the current moment of time, it is probably better if they kept the money to themselves, because it often happens that people do not plan well for their retirement. So it may happen that you are in your 60s and your 70s and you are short of money because you have sent your son or daughter to Harvard or to Yale, and you have expended all the money in their bachelor degree and maybe in their medical school, in their law school, and so on. So, this is something to keep in mind. There is a need for transition from the Confucian mindset and the traditional mindset, which is there in many of these communities, to a more modern capitalistic mindset, where you do realize that when you take a student loan, then of course, if you are a student yourself, you are much more cognizant about how you spend the money, and you also realize the value of the money which is there as far as education is concerned.